Diamondback is the greatest roller coaster of all time, and here's why. Right off the bat, the presentation of Diamondback is absolutely perfect. It's pretty flawless in terms of regional amusement parks. You can't get much better than Diamondback. I love how nice and clean the station is. It looks very well done. And I love the name too. Diamondback is a perfect name for a roller coaster. It's the type of name that belongs at Kings Island. Who really names their rides really well. I'd consider Banshee and Beast also great roller coaster names. Some of their recent coasters need to work on that, but Diamondback is one of the all-time great coaster names. Not only is the name perfect, but the logo is spectacular as well. So much so that I have a sweatshirt with the logo on it and a sticker on the back of my MacBook because I love this ride so much, and the logo and name are perfect. Diamondback also has a great setting as it goes back into the woods compared to other B&M hypers, which are right next to a parking lot or a street. But that's an upside of Kings Island and its location, but it also plays in favor of Diamondback and the ride experience. Another key factor of Diamondback's excellent presentation is the splashdown. It's such a spectacle, and off-ride I could watch it all day. It's mesmerizing to watch. Every time a train is coming, I had to stop and watch it every day I was at Kings Island. It's just such a spectacle, and I love watching it, and I really wish more coasters did a splashdown the way that Diamondback does it. For example, the Matterhorn at Disneyland, one of my home parks, has a splashdown on both sides of the attraction, and it's hidden behind a wall, which is kind of frustrating, but On the other hand, Kings Island really put the splashdown front and center. The path goes all the way around it. You have a clear view from the queue, from the midways. It's just spectacular. It's very well done, and it looks super nice with the grass, and the way that the splashdown pool looks is just spectacular. It's so well done. As for the on-ride experience, the layout is pretty straightforward. It is a B&M hyper after all. You have the drop, you bank right, an airtime hill, then you bank left, another airtime hill, you hit the turnaround, you hit another airtime hill, then you hit a rising helix into the mid-course brake run. You drop off of that, you go with back-to-back airtime hills, and then you hit a helix, and then you hit the final splashdown. So it's pretty straightforward, but the ride is so much more than that. Right off the bat, the trains and the restraints are perfect. They are by far some of my favorite restraints of all time. The clamshell restraints are so comfortable, and they don't come down on you, so you can actually enjoy the ride and focus on the ride and not holding up your restraint, which is frustrating for other attractions like Mystic Timbers when you have to put effort into holding up your restraint. And especially with every RMC out there, it's so annoying dealing with those restraints. But on B&M Hypers, it is not an issue, and Diamondback is no exception. As for the ride itself, I'm going to go through the experience in the front row first, then the middle, and then the back. So in the front row, Diamondback is solid. It's not the greatest coaster of all time, but it's super fun. In the front row, obviously, the first drop doesn't give you much. A little bit of floater, but not incredible. The first two airtime hills give you very strong airtime cresting into the airtime hill, but once you hit that midpoint, the airtime just kind of dies, which is a little lame, but it is really impressive how much force it throws you up into the air in the first half of both of those camelbacks. The turnaround is fine. It's the similar deal with the third camelback, but the problem with the third camelback with the trim is fine. It's never bothered me in any row, but the valley right before it is rather shaky, which could be an issue. It doesn't bother me at all, but it's there. So if you're the type of person who is sensitive to a rattle, then that is by far the worst part of Diamondback. It's pretty shaky. After that third airtime hill, you curve up into the mid-course brake run. In the front row, you get some solid positive Gs, and of course, that's where you get your on-ride picture. After the mid-course brake run, you drop off. Again, you wouldn't get much in the front because it's a drop. The following two airtime hills are okay in the front. They're not as good as the first three. After that is the helix, which is fine. You get a nice view of the midway down below and the beast's entrance, and then you drop down into the splashdown, which is super nice in the front because it feels like you're gliding, because you are gliding along the water, and there's no one behind you, so it looks like it's just you, which is a pretty nice visual. You can really say that about every coaster, though. The visuals in the front row will always be the best. You know, the wind in your face and all that. That's always a spectacular sensation, which is why it's always nice to get a front row ride on any coaster, including Diamondback. The middle rows differ from my experience in a little bit in terms of the airtime hills. For example, the first two airtime hills in the middle, I have vivid memories of being absolutely blown away by how long I was out of my seat in the middle rows. I don't think it was the most sustained force, but it was just the duration of it was incredible because you float out of your seat before the crest, and unlike the front row, you stay out of your seat afterwards as you fall back down. The problem with the middle rows, though, is that for the last two airtime hills after the mid-course brake run, it's kind of dead. You don't get that much airtime, if any, which is pretty lame, especially on a B&M Hyper. But, you know, I excuse it because the back row on Diamondback, it is just absolutely insane. I love the back row on Diamondback so much. It is absolutely a back row ride. If you are ever at Kings Island, you need to ride Diamondback in the back row. It is spectacular. The first drop is obviously amazing. You get a really strong pop as you crest down, and then you keep floating out of your seat until it levels out. It's just, the profiling on B&M Hyper drops is just spectacular. I love watching it as it gets steeper and steeper before it bottoms out. It's just so impressive, and when you're in the back you can really see it because you can see all the riders slowly go under themselves right before pulling out. It's so cool. First two big airtime hills, oh my gosh, man, you begin floating out of your seat before the crest. It's a really strong airtime moment, like before you even crest the hill. It's spectacular, and then you crest it and you get thrown. It's incredible. It's hard to describe. It's like a euphoric feeling because you're already floating, and then it just throws you even harder while you're in the air. It's spectacular, and you don't have to do it once. You do it twice, like back to back. It's just insane, and I love it so much. I love that feeling. The turnaround is really the only dead spot on Diamondback in the back row, which is fine. It's a turnaround. A lot of coasters have them, but you get a similar sensation of euphoric airtime on the third airtime hill. It's not as pronounced, and you do have to deal with that rattle, which again does not bother me. And of course the trim, which did not impact my rides like at all. I've heard a lot of complaining about trims on B&M Hyper coasters, including Orion, Fury, and Intimidator, and they've never bothered me. I'm not sure if I've gotten incredibly lucky or if I'm just immune to that, but I feel like that hill still gives you very strong airtime. And once again, the curve up into the mid-course brake run gives you really solid positive Gs, which really helps Diamondback in terms of diversity of forces. It's just incredible. For the drop off the mid-course brake run, you get another solid pop. The mid-course might slow you down a little. It doesn't bother me, again. It might sound like I'm making a lot of excuses for this ride, but it truly does not bother me. It's another fantastic airtime moment dropping off the mid-course brake run. So, I'll take it. The next two airtime hills are basically smaller versions of the first three, but they're still very solid moments, and I love them. They're honestly better airtime moments than the best airtime moment on a majority of coasters. So I love these hills. The final helix is really nice because it lines you up for the drop into the splashdown, and I am telling you, the drop into the splashdown in the back row of Diamondback is by far one of the most underrated airtime moments I've ever been on. It is absolutely spectacular. It has the strength of the first two hills, but it's in a shorter time frame because the drop is a lot shorter. It's basically like a smaller drop off the mid-course brake run, but it throws you. It's an awesome feeling. And then when you actually land, you land in the splashdown. And if you're in the back row, you can actually reach back and touch the water. And I've done that so many times. Oh my gosh, man. It's legitimately magical. I love Diamondback in the back row. It is absolutely incredible. You have to do it in the back row. I am telling you, do not miss out on Diamondback in the back row when you go to Kings Island. So, I've been through the ride experience. I've explained what I love about it so much. I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea. It is very repetitive, but I love that floating airtime sensation. I love how it throws you twice, basically. It throws you a second time while you're in midair when you're in the back row. It's just spectacular, and I love that it focuses on it and it does it over and over again. And in my opinion, it really stands out from other B&M hypers who kind of lose their way. For example, Mako. I don't want to dig too deep into this comparison because I really want to focus on how incredible Diamondback at Kings Island is. But Mako kind of dies after the mid-course break run. There's only one solid airtime moment. Diamondback has four, and in my opinion, the best airtime moment is the last one, which just blows my mind. It's spectacular. I love that drop into the splashdown so much. It's so underrated. I'm telling you, pay attention to that drop the next time you ride Diamondback. It just throws you, and it's so powerful, and it's spectacular. I love the ride experience on Diamondback, but I also love Diamondback for sentimental reasons. I'm just gonna go through a few of my favorite Diamondback memories. I got to ride the attraction for the first time in the summer of 2018, and then in 2021 I went back to Kings Island and I got to ride it more. So my first ever ride in 2018, I was terrified of the thing. I was still afraid of coasters back then, and Diamondback was actually my first coaster over 200 feet. So I'll forever love this ride just for that fact, that it was a major milestone in getting over my fear of roller coasters, and for that alone, it will always have a special place in my heart. After my first ride, I lapped the thing. I loved it so much. It was my favorite coaster back then. So when I went back in 2021, I was super nervous. I was like, this was my first coaster like Diamondback. And at that point, I had been on other coasters that focus on floater airtime like Mako and Steel Eel. So I was a little nervous that Diamondback was going to be like average or below average when comparing it to my memory of it in 2018 and my more recent experience on those other coasters. But my first ride in 2021, it still met those expectations, which was a spectacular accomplishment because I was so nervous, but it did it. It's a spectacular ride. And then a few days later, on July 3rd, 2021, I got to ride Diamondback during the park's fireworks show, and that was one of the most spectacular rides on any attraction I've ever been on in my entire life. After that ride, I wrote some notes, and I described it as pure magic, or literally magic. It was absolutely amazing. The airtime was so powerful, and maybe it's because I was distracted. I was watching the fireworks instead of the layout, but it's one of the best coaster experiences I've ever had. And as a theme park fan, as the theme park nerd, I live I live for experiences like that, and Diamondback gave me one of the best ever, and it was incredible. It was magical. It was amazing, and I love it so much. After that ride, the fireworks were still going off. When I got off the ride, the park was closed, so I couldn't go again. So I was just watching the fireworks, and I almost teared up. I was on the verge of tears as God Bless the USA was playing, and that was just a ride experience I'm never gonna forget. It was absolutely perfect, and I love everything about it. The next day, I came back on July 4th, 2021. I had Fastlane that day, and I rode Diamondback 15 times. 15 times in one day, and I loved every single ride. Towards the end of the night, I did get a ride where fireworks, not shot off by the park, but by local residents, they were going off all around the park. It made like a perimeter around the park. I'll never forget that image, going up the lift hill during sunset and seeing fireworks just sprinkled around the park. It's just beautiful, and and getting to ride it like that was just wow. So yeah, I've only ridden Diamondback in 2 different years, and in both years it gave me some spectacular memories, and I'm super excited for the next time I get to ride Diamondback, whether that's in 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. I don't care. I love this ride. This ride will always have a special place in my heart, and it is my number one overall. I love Diamondback so much, and I do not care what anyone else says. Diamondback is absolutely spectacular, and you need to ride it. You have to ride it. I love Diamondback. Please go ride Diamondback at Kings Island. Thank you.